Instead of making the ship faster, how about installing some seatbelts?
Seatbelts are dead weight. I feel the need for speed.
Yes, but I feel the nafety for safety.
Oh, fuff.
Part of this project involves cleaning up some of the old wiring. So backtrack it, clip it, rewire it. All of the load circuits coming out of the relay box come out to these 2-pin connectors with a hot and a ground in each connector. Not every accessory is going to use the ground, because in some cases it's more convenient to ground the accessory closer to its use. The first thing we're going to work with is our compressors, which happen to be these 2 loads here with the heavy gauge blue wires. These are our compressors, they're heavy gauge. Now, the old wiring for the compressors, because we've got 2 of them on this vehicle, one of them is here. It's been clipped, cleaned up, and a seal installed for our new connector. The other one is here. Same idea, it's been clipped, prepped, ready to be put together. Compressor is physically here, and it's grounded locally. It's grounded right here. And then on the opposite side, we have the same situation going on. We've got the compressor there, and it's grounded locally. So what we're going to do is to just install our single pin at the 2-pin connectors on the end of these wires. We'll put it into the housing, and then we'll do the final routing of the wire for the compressor to meet up with the pigtail from the box. Now, very important to get these into the correct location. So I want to make sure that this goes into the correct hole. And of course the pins themselves are directional in the cavities. They would only want to go into the cavity in one orientation. Because we're not utilizing the second cavity on these, we do have a plug that serves to seal the connector. And we do want to at least make an attempt to get the silicone seal around the wire seated down into the cavity as well. This is a bigger issue with these larger wires, just because everything is kind of at its physical size limits. Once everything is seated, go ahead and set the connector. Just pushing it in, which serves to lock all of the terminals in place. Do the same, or make sure you've done the same to the mating connector. And again, verifying that the current leads are paired up. There we go. So now, that has all worked as planned. This circuit has the trigger routed through the pressure switch here, which is set for 200 psi. That's the working pressure for this onboard air system. So just want to confirm that the system automatically shuts off appropriately at about 200 psi. Perfect.
One little thing to point out, we're working on an enclosed environment. We won't be starting the rig, and we're going to be working with electrical, which means we'll be draining the battery. We do have it hooked up to a small battery charger just to keep it topped up as we're doing the work we need to do.
Okay, so moving on to the next circuit, these are the pillar lights. They're coming through here, and this is a question about how do I want to route the wiring. I have a temptation to want to route it around and bring it in underneath the box from this side, just to kind of keep things not dangling in this area. So I'm thinking on this side and probably give myself about that much wire. We'll go ahead and install the connector for the pillar lights. Okay, now in theory,
Nope. Nothing.
Okay. So pillar lights. But you did hear the click here,
I
right?
did hear the click.
Okay. So pillar lights will need to be troubleshot. So putting in the front bumper lights, the conversation becomes one of routing wiring around the front bumper in such a way that it's going to stay nice, neat, tied up.
And have zero risk of getting tied into the winch line. So we're zip tying it to the brake.
Yeah, and
line.
there's stuff under the bumper here available to be able to wrap a zip tie around.
And this is, so far, is all factory provided wiring from Rigid, correct?
It's all, well, this portion is from
Yes.
Rigid, and this is leveraging their harness because they have their connectors associated with these lights.
And you're just using that front mount.
This is just a matter of routing the wiring up to where the relay box is going to be at, opting, since this is coming off the bumper, to route it with the rest of the wiring that is coming from the bumper, which is our winch in this case. So this will run with the winch wiring up here to the point where it's ready to connect in with the other. Now connecting up the bumper light wiring.
Nothing. I'm not hearing a relay.
There is power to the light. So troubleshooting why the wires don't work, or why the lights we just hooked up didn't work. One of the pieces is to check the wiring between the plug and the lights. And with some jumpers, we were able to confirm that yes, if power and ground are applied to these connectors, the lights in fact do turn on. The next question is, are we providing power to the light from the switch box? Same idea, we connect into the jumpers and confirm that yes, when the switch is on, we've got power. However, we determined that the ground that I've provided in this connector is not providing a ground to the accessories. So while some accessories that are using a local ground seem to work just fine, ones that are grounding back through this wiring are not. So basic troubleshooting, start tracing our wires. What I determined is that I have a ground wire for the accessories that has not been connected to a ground source, or to a ground. So, basic troubleshooting. Why is my stuff not working? I don't have a complete electric circuit. We'll need to provide a ground for these accessories in order for them to function. So reconnecting, and now we have bumper lights.
Okay. That's amazing.
So looking up the DRL, deciding it makes sense to kind of piggyback on the wiring that's going down to the bumper. It's a lot of the same path, and just put it in the same loom.
And don't let the three hands fool you. Roy's back!
Merry New Year! So you can see, if you look in real close, you can see how when you crimp, you want those pieces to overlap. And if you crimp them, sometimes they will butt together and they'll tweak funny. So you bend one in a little further and then you crimp, and you get a much better, more solid connection.
And for the DRLs, we are not using
the ground.
Does the headlights have an integrated ground?
Yes, we tested that already, and in fact, here, put my jumper. Before we put the plug together, let's test the wires. Yay! Piece of paper that fell.
fell.
Right here.
It is, okay. So the DRL is the heavy, and then the bumper is in fact the yellow. Okay, make sure I have the right pair of connectors. So that's the bumper. That is the DRL. Okay, now.
All right, I'm gonna go hit the switch.
Yep.
Does the key need to be on?
Yeah, back it to the reverse to the accessory position.
And we make sure we test the bumpers too, since we messed with them a little bit.
Yep.
Bottom row.
DRLs are good.
Okay.
And the bumper. And the bumpers are good. Okay, so before we go forward, I want to verify that the locker switches operate correctly in terms of the relays and providing power, because the locker wiring goes underneath the vehicle. And so to work on that, we're going to have the vehicle in a position that's going to make being under the hood a little bit more awkward. And so I'd just like to know that that end is all as it needs to be before we start having to climb up and down in the vehicle.
So should I mess with him and turn on the rear locker when he's asking for the front?
You know, he might not appreciate that much.
Yeah, but I would think it's funny.
Oh, I would too.
You need a rear locker?
Got them both.
They cancel the rear locker?
He canceled both.
Okay, front locker again. Okay. So, lifted the vehicle up in the air and traced out the wiring that we had put in place for the lockers previously. the way this had worked is we had power coming up from the locker engagement that then drove a relay to trigger sensors for the factory locker controls. We're going to abandon those sensors. We no longer need them with the way we've rerouted this, and all we need to do is supply power to the locker engagement. So terminate with the ends on these connectors and into our relay box. So, plugged on the ground. I was being very anal about this.
Yeah, unfortunately when you're doing wiring, you kind of have to.
You guys didn't have to pull the loom and redo it or any of that.
Well,
We already did that
because
once.
we did it last time.
So,
Did it a year ago.
yeah, if you watch our video on wiring up the lockers the first time, you know where this came from.
Because it is rather unique to Kenny.
It is.
Not saying no one else has ever done it, but this is not factory.
Making the Eaton E-lockers work with the factory Rubicon control wiring was the project from a year ago.
But I had the additional requirement that a lot of people didn't have of having the dash lights still work.
And this year, we're abandoning the factory control wiring. So,
Right. Because I don't need the dash lights to work because I have the switch lights to tell me if they're engaged or not.
okay. Blue.
Blue, front locker. Orange, no, blue and brown go together.
Blue and brown.
Blue and brown.
Okay.
And then green and orange.
Green and orange. Double checking the pins again as I go.
Always a good idea.
Okay. Those are connected. So now,
Now we need to test.
we test.
So let me climb in. Glad when we get the new pins in.
They've been ordered.
Yep. Hi, Mom. All right. Ready?
Ready? Okay, front locker. Confirm. And unlocked. Rear locker. Confirmed. Yeah. So yes, there is a slight issue with the clearance with the shifter and the custom 3D fab switch panel. We actually seeing here that the shifter potentially makes contact with some of the switches. Now the good news is it's going to want the switches to be turned off, but you are going to run into a situation where it potentially will turn things off for you. So now we may be able to address some clearance, slight difference in the positioning of the shifter, or even potentially warm the shifter up with a torch and bend the shifter slightly.
Bend it back because back here in fourth gear.
Does it want to go into second?
No, there it is. Yeah, in second gear, fourth gear. Yeah, it doesn't quite want to engage reverse, but yeah, we've got We've got a little bit of room to come back depending on cup holders and what's in the cup holders. So yeah.
Okay, put that on the list. We already have a custom shift lever for the transfer case. Then we can find a custom one for the transmission. Show Roy what you worked on today, Ken.
I've resolved the contact between the switches and the gear shift.
Yep. So that's cool. And notice what's back. He put the center console back. So not only do I have cup holders, although I got to find my little things.
And we're going to have a conversation about the cup holders, but
Oh,
but a little bit of a trim here at the front of the console to accommodate the gear shift
pick that up so you can see.
coming into this location up front here. So I had to trim a little bit off the front of the console
Got it.
to make that work.
Uh-huh.
And then the console is also no longer interfering. We've got a gap down here at the bottom and opened up here at the top so that it's no longer interfering with the shifter and its range of motion coming up into 4 high or 4 low. This is this ongoing thing of, it's like this kit was supposed to be for a TJ, but it wants more travel out of this than this is able to get. Now, some of that may be this custom shifter that you've got.
Yeah, it could be. Because it's not angled like the old one was.
But even so, again, that full range, it's basically against the front of the well that it's in.
That's sweet.
Okay, but that may mean when this is all the way back, when you're on the trail,
I can't use the front cup holder.
you got to use short stuff in that front cup holder.
Well, that's why I always get the short water bottle, but that's okay.